Tess Martinelli, here in front of Chapman University's Fowler School of Law. I'll have local reactions to the Israel-Hamas conflict.
This shop near the Chapman campus is much more than a second-hand thrift store. I'm Mariana Quesada, and coming up, I'll show you why the collection by Casa Teresa is different.
We are here because the House has been thrown into chaos.
Another showdown in the House today as Republicans fight once again over who will be the Speaker. Those stories and more just ahead on Chapman News.
From Dodge College of Film and Media Arts, this is Chapman News.
Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of Chapman News. I'm Luis Avila.
And I'm Tegan Cali. Today we begin with team coverage of the Israel-Hamas war.
President Biden is on his way to Israel today in a show of U.S. support, 10 days after the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Meanwhile, there are reports today that an Israel airstrike has hit a hospital in Gaza, and Palestinian officials say as many as 500 may have been killed. Since the unprecedented surprise attack by Hamas and retaliatory airstrikes in Gaza by Israel, at least 1,400 Israelis and over 2,800 Palestinians have been killed. Israeli officials ordered more than 1 million Palestinians from northern Gaza to evacuate south, ahead of an expected ground invasion by Israeli forces. Gaza is now facing a humanitarian crisis. The United Nations says Israel's total blockade of the region is putting Palestinians at risk of starvation. The U.S. is working to open the southern crossing between Gaza and Egypt to allow international aid to reach Palestinians. According to U.S. defense officials, 2,000 U.S. troops have been notified to prepare for possible deployment in Israel to advise and provide medical support. Back here in the U.S., police say a 71-year-old Chicago landlord, angry over the war, stabbed and killed a 6-year-old boy and wounded his mother. The victims are Palestinian American, and authorities are charging the landlord with a hate crime.
Here at Chapman University, in the wake of the Israel-Hamas war, a symposium on Islamophobia has been postponed.
Our Tess Martinelli is live at Chapman's Fowler School of Law with the latest.
Thanks, Tegan and Luis. That symposium on Islamophobia was set to take place last week at Chapman's Law School. However, the Orange County Register says that reports the school postponed it until the spring given the current climate. The Register also says that many students disagreed with the decision. They say now is actually the time to have these difficult conversations. Meanwhile, demonstrations of support for both Israel and Palestine continue to take place in Southern California.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free!
Flags filled the sky and chants erupted through the streets at Saturday's demonstration for Palestinian liberation.
Palestine will be free!
The demonstration, organized by the Palestinian Youth Movement, led protesters on a march from the Israeli consulate to the federal building in Westwood, prompting police to temporarily shut down part of the 405 freeway.
Give it up for shutting down the streets in support of Palestine!
The protest is in response to Israel's bombardment of Gaza, which was a counterattack to Hamas's surprise attack a little more than a week ago. Israel has dropped 6,000 bombs on Gaza so far. The death toll currently sits at 2,300, many of the victims being women and children. The remaining 2.3 million citizens of Gaza are cut off from water, food, internet, and medical supplies. Amid the atrocities in Gaza, protester Lewis, who did not want to give his last name, says he was able to find comfort among the other ralliers.
It kind of just feels like coming back home, just to a bunch of family that are basically for the same cause, So it just feels like a family party, basically.
Demonstrators showed the same solidarity at pro-Israel rallies that have occurred in Los Angeles within the last week. Many in the Jewish community say Israel must defend itself from Hamas. Chapman University Rabbi Heidi Cohen says the conflict is painful to watch.
And it affects all of us, and especially those of us within the Jewish community, and really throughout the world, too, of just supporters of human rights.
While there is division in the nation, many of the demonstrators share a similar goal: to end violence against innocent civilians. The rallies in Los Angeles this weekend have proven the power of community in times of struggle.
There have also been demonstrations, both pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian, that have taken place on college campuses across the nation. Our team coverage continues now with Gavin Nguyen, who's back in the studio with that story.
Thanks, Tess. That's right. The canceled panel you referred to earlier here at Chapman is just one example of the effect the conflict in Israel has had on college campuses in America. This week, I looked at the rallies being held across America and how top universities are dealing with clashes on their campuses. These images come from New York City, Los Angeles, and Miami. Thousands march either in support of Palestine or in support of Israel. In Miami, some 6,500 miles away, both sides have deep personal ties to the conflict.
They go in parties, in raves, kill our people, kill our brothers, our sisters, and then they come here and they talk about freeing Palestine?
They make 1 million of us live in 48. They live in another 2 million in 67. Now another million from Gaza? No.
College campuses, too, have become battlegrounds for the two sides. At Columbia University last Thursday, campus officials closed the campus to the public, citing safety concerns, as hundreds of pro-Palestine and pro-Israel demonstrators faced off. And at Harvard, a student group released a letter that solely blamed Israel for the current conflict, which quickly drew backlash from Harvard students and alumni alike. J.J. Kimke, a Jewish history student at Harvard, expressed his shock after the letter was released.
The fact that our fellow colleagues and students could think that, the fact that they would excuse the murder of our families and eventually us as well, this, I don't think, makes the Harvard campus a safe place at the moment for Jews.
And on Chapman's campus, Students for Justice in Palestine released a statement stating, quote, "Our community members have been harassed by the same racist rhetoric that is being leveraged towards our people back in Palestine, and the harassment our community has received has been belittled as bias incidents against Palestinians by the administration. It is clear that in major cities and college campuses alike, the Israel-Hamas war has shown the deep divides within our country." We'll have more team coverage later in the newscast when we'll talk with a Chapman professor for some background and perspective on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Reporting live in studio for Chapman News, I'm Gavin Nguyen. Luis and Tegan, back to you.
The U.S. House of Representatives today is voting on Ohio Republican Jim Jordan's nomination to be Speaker. Jordan is still trying to secure enough votes and, in fact, lost the first vote earlier today. He says he expects there will be several rounds of voting. At least 9 members of Jordan's party are refusing to support him. Jordan is a top ally of former President Trump and co-founder of the conservative House Freedom Caucus. Democrats, meanwhile, are getting behind Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York.
It's being called the most important election in Europe this year. The results in Poland's parliamentary election will be finalized today. The nationalist conservative Law and Justice Party has been in power for 8 years, but failed to secure a majority of seats in Sunday's vote. Support for Poland's neighbor Ukraine was a major issue in the election, along with women's rights and the migrant debate. The Liberal opposition party is expected to improve Poland's overall relations with the European Union and has also promised to liberalize abortion laws in the heavily Catholic country. The Orange County Sheriff's Department is asking the public for help in identifying human remains found in Trabuco Canyon. Nearly 27 years ago, on December 13, 1996, a skeleton was found east of Trabuco Creek Road. Investigators say it was a 15 to 19-year-old male. Police think the remains have been there for roughly a year before being discovered. The remains did not match anyone in the missing persons database. No information has been released by the DNA Doe Project, a nonprofit group that helps law enforcement by using high-tech genealogy to resolve cases of unidentified human remains. They have determined the man found in Trabuco Canyon was of Latin American descent. A previous sketch of what he might have looked like was done back in 2010. However, working with the new information, there is now an updated sketch. Investigator Lauren Felix is working on the case. She says that the Sheriff's Department is determined to solve the identity of the remains.
Somebody out there is missing him, whether they filed a police report or had no idea what happened. Somebody out there is missing this young man. And our motivation is, and I know we've said the same thing, that we can't imagine being in that spot of having a loved one go missing and not knowing what happened to them. So that's kind of the driving force for us to learn this technology and apply it to our jobs here.
Investigators are asking for the public's help. Anyone with information is asked to contact the department through its website.
Utility crews in Anaheim are working to fix dozens of streetlights that have been intentionally disabled. Since the beginning of the year, over 60 streetlights have been disabled by thieves who are in search of copper wireless cell. The Anaheim Police Department says they have noticed a significant spike in the crime. They also note that when streetlights are disabled, areas become less safe at night as other crimes can increase. Repair crews are using aluminum wire and locks to try to prevent future thefts. Just ahead, more on the Israel-Hamas war.
We'll be joined live by a Chapman University professor who will talk with us about the conflict's history.
I'm Mariana Quesada, and coming up, I'll have everything you need to know about today's weather. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
I'll be seeing you in all of our favorite places with laughter and warm embraces all day through.
Elmo loves you. I love you too.
With free COVID-19 vaccines, sunnier days are ahead. Visit getvaccineanswers.org.
I'll be seeing you.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzz and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So, yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. As it turns out, we have very similar personalities. And this cat makes me make art because he's always motivating me to take pictures of him, to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. It's just that simple. Well, he's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Welcome back. Our team coverage of the Israel-Hamas war continues now with our live guest in studio.
Dr. Hannah Ridge is an assistant professor of political science here at Chapman. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Ridge. The Israel-Palestine conflict, of course, goes back several decades. In your opinion, what are some of the most important historical developments that we should remember now?
Some of the most important dates that have happened in the Israel-Palestine conflict are really spread over these several decades. If you think about 1948, the beginning of really the conflict in a lot of ways is because the UN announced what was called the Partition Plan for the British Mandate in Palestine, and it divided the state in theory into a two-state solution. Immediately, really, this though turned into what we call the 1948 war, which resulted in Israel conquering a lot of the land that was otherwise going to have been called Palestine. That's where we see in some of the video clips, right, women speaking about families fleeing. This continued on these sort of borders until really 1967, which is another key date, the 1967 war. That's where we see the expansion of the Israeli state into what we now call the occupation of the Palestinian territories. When you see a lot of conflict negotiations going on, talking about peace agreements, we usually hear discussions talking about restoring the lay of the land to the pre-1967 borders, meaning before the expanded occupation, but definitely talking about subsequent the enlarged state to the 1948 borders. Another key date to remember for the current conflict is 2007, which is after the 2006 elections, where we saw Hamas take power with a plurality vote in the Gaza Strip. Israel started blockading Gaza, and that's been going ever since. In theory, this was designed to prevent the flow of weapons into Gaza because Israel and the United States consider Hamas a terrorist organization. But it's actually, in practice, been expanded to include bans on a lot of things like food supplies, medical supplies, and construction equipment. So those are some key dates that get us to where we are now.
Social media is now a major factor in many conflicts. In your view, what are some of the most dangerous misinformation and disinformation that has been widely shared throughout this last several days?
Some of the misinformation that we see now is not new to the age of social media. We see a lot of comments that say things like, this is a millennia-old conflict, or this is just about religion, neither of which accurately characterize the current conflict. There's also misinformation or disinformation campaigns that go on about basically every action that is taken in the conflict, where people dispute who's responsible for different actions, or attribute blame, or attribute everything to really conspiracy theories.
You're teaching a class this semester called Politics of the Contemporary Middle East. What is that class about?
That class takes a very wide view of Middle Eastern politics. It's certainly not intended to be heavily focused on conflict, because everything we think of happening in American and European politics are also things that happen in Middle Eastern politics, right? We have social movements, elections, parliaments, those kind of things that we are used to talking about in political science. Unfortunately, because of the current conflict, we have revised things a little bit to include more discussion of Israel-Palestine. It's always part of the curriculum, but now it's happening at a time being set by the region and not being set by my syllabus.
And finally, what do you think about the future of Middle East peace efforts?
I'd like to say that I'm optimistic, given that public opinion on the ground is largely in favor of peace, and it's in favor really of a two-state solution, usually based around those 1967 borders that I mentioned before. That said, the political leadership is not necessarily invested in peace or invested in honest negotiations with each other, and that's always going to be a dampening effect.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Dr. Hannah Ridge, Assistant Professor of Political Science here at Chapman. Now, Tegan, it's not feeling like fall quite about now.
Mariana Quesada has your latest forecast. Mariana, how long is this heat going to last?
Thanks, Luis and Tegan. Yes, it is a bit warmer than we would expect for mid-October, and the heat is going to stay with us. Let's start here in Orange. So today, Orange is 81 degrees and sunny, a bit of the same that we have been experiencing, but the nation is anything but warming up. If we take a look at the warmest in the nation today, it is going to be Las Vegas with a high of 87. Last week, Las Vegas was 93, so it has cooled off a bit, but is still the warmest today in the nation. A little bit on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Seattle, which is at 55 degrees. It is the coolest in the nation currently, and it looks like we're having a little bit of trouble with the background before me, but we're going to get that weather right to you. As I was saying, Seattle is the coolest in the nation. It is going to be in 55 today. A little bit more, if we look over here, a lot of other cities in the U.S. are as well in the 50s. So if we take a look, Minneapolis is at 57 and Chicago is at 58. If we go a little bit towards the 60s, we're getting a little bit warmer. Atlanta is at 62, and it is the same as Washington, D.C. at 62 degrees. Almost identical to that is New York at 63 degrees. Leading into the 70s, we have on the East Coast San Francisco. It is at 69 degrees, almost 70. What is 70 is Austin. Here we have Austin at 70 degrees. And then Denver, a little similar, a little warmer, is at 74 degrees. And finally, getting warmer, and lastly, Miami is at 75 degrees. It is very similar to the weather we have here in Orange County. So, taking a look at Newport Beach, it is also 75, just like Miami was. And then Westminster is at 78, so it's getting pretty warm, but not as warm as Mission Viejo and Irvine, which are both 80 degrees. A little bit cooler than that, actually. Let's take a look at the beach cities, Laguna Beach and San Clemente, both really cool at 74 degrees. They're much cooler than Miami was today. And lastly, let's take a look at the warmest in Orange County, which was Orange. It is the same as last week. Last week, Orange was the warmest in Orange County, and today it is the same. So it is 81 degrees. So let's zoom in on Orange and let's take a look at what we're going to be looking at for the next 5 days. Today, Tuesday, we have a high of 83 and a low of 61. Tomorrow, we're getting a little bit warmer with a high of 85 and a low of 60. Thursday, we're getting on into the 90s with a high of 92 and a low of 62. And Friday, again in the 90s with a high of 90 and a low of 65. And we get a cool off a little bit on Saturday, but we're still going to feel the heat with a high of 82 and a low of 62. So that is all I have for today. I hope you haven't thrown out your summer clothes because you're still going to need them. Back to you at the desk.
A plan to build a new amphitheater in San Clemente is getting mixed reviews. City council members are divided on their support for the project. It is uncertain whether the amphitheater will be an indoor or outdoor venue. Voice of OC reports because of the measure, 5 San Clemente residents would have the right to vote on any outdoor land usage. However, City Attorney Elizabeth Mitchell says that there is a written exemption for amphitheaters. One San Clemente resident says that she is in favor of the amphitheater.
Having summer theater I think would be so fun since, we have perfect weather pretty much year round, so having a space for outdoor theater and events would be amazing, and then just bringing the arts into local community is always a great thing.
It is unclear how the venue will be financed. Former San Clemente Mayor Eggleston warns the proposal could cost millions of dollars. However, Parks and Recreation Director Samantha Wiley says there is a great community support for performing arts space.
Big changes are coming to an iconic shopping center here in the city of Orange. The village, also known as Orange Mall, is closing its interior portion early next year, meaning several stores will close their doors. The mall is 50 years old and has undergone many transformations in recent years. Several retail tenants were recently notified they had just under 4 months to clear their space. Fiesta Center, a family-owned business that has been at the mall for just over 5 years, has started a closing sale. Store manager Jocelyn Barrientos says the mall closure has been difficult.
It's been a little tough because we're looking to relocate. It's also been a hit on the employees because they don't know what's next or what is coming up. And it's very slow, so it's it was over the years, it just got slower and slower with the foot traffic in the mall.
Mall management says the decision to close reflects the shift in consumer shopping habits and the new realities of the retail industry. It is unclear what will be done with the interior portion of the mall, but management says it plans to revitalize the exterior storefronts to, quote, reposition the shopping center for long-term success in this new retail environment.
I'm Avery Feldman. Coming up in sports, we have the MLB playoff updates, the NFL moment of silence, and the NHL tape band. We'll also check in on our own Chapman sports teams. Stay with us.
You are in the middle of a game. Adrenaline coursing through your body. And you are calling the shots. Feel the power as you control the game's narrative. From commentator to camera virtuoso, replay wizard to unyielding director. There is no better experience than being in the moment. Challenge your limits and embrace the electrifying rush that comes with the crowd's roar. You never know the epic plays you will capture and the masterpiece you could make. You could be an amateur learning on the fly or a pro wanting to expand your skills. You will always fit in. And what better place to broadcast your skills than in sports? Never knowing what is coming next and always coming across something new. Join the Chapman Sports Broadcasting Network and experience the thrill of life.
Huntington Beach has approved an ordinance to start issuing citations for the misuse of e-bikes. The City Council says it is responding to complaints from several residents who say groups of teenagers are using e-bikes recklessly, ignoring traffic signals, and sometimes swarming intersections. According to the City Council, there have been 77 e-bike collisions in the last 8 months. In Huntington Beach, police could now cite violators and also impound e-bikes.
To state the perception of the public safety issue we're having is that children that don't know, minors that don't know the rules of the road are operating very heavy vehicles E-bikes, a regular bike weighs 4 pounds, e-bikes weigh 65 pounds. There's a physics problem that starts to run into that.
The new city law went into effect last week. Now, speaking of exercise, baseball playoffs continue, and just like the Angels, I'm out.
Chapman News sports reporter Avery Feldman has that and more.
Thanks, Luis and Tegan. Welcome back to the Best Campus Sports Show. Hitting it off with the MLB playoffs, the Diamondbacks play the Phillies in the second game of the series later today, after the Phillies won last night 5-3. The Phillies' first 3 runs were absolute homers from Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, and Nick Castellanos. It was a tough loss for the Diamondbacks and an even harder watch as a fan, but I'm still rooting for them. The Rangers lead the series 2-0 after yesterday's 5-4 win against the Astros. Even with 2 home runs from Yordan Alvarez and another from Alex Bregman, the Astros just could not pull off a win. The Rangers' Jonah Heim launched a solo homer for the final run of the game. Over the weekend, all NFL teams held a moment of silence before the game, in light of the attack on Israel. The league made the statement, "The NFL mourns the loss of innocent lives in Israel and strongly condemns all forms of terrorism. The depravity of the act is beyond comprehension, and we grieve with the families of those killed, injured, and still missing. We pray for peace and will always stand against the evils of hate." Several teams and athletes have made statements as well. The NHL recently banned pride tape on sticks in order to reduce distractions. This ban comes after the cancellation of theme nights, where players wear jerseys in support of a variety of groups such as the military and people fighting cancer. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman says the issue of who wanted to wear a particular uniform on a particular night overshadowed everything our clubs were doing. The organization has not yet made a comment about the ban of pride tape, but has received backlash from both players and fans. In our own Chapman Sports News, a big congratulations to Everett Prusak, named SCIAC's Offensive Athlete of the Week for a second time this season. Water polo has now won 8 consecutive games. And Colin Keefe was named SCIAC's Defensive Athlete of the Week after football's 21-0 win against Pomona Pitzer. Congratulations again, Everett and Colin. That's all I have for today. Make sure to watch the D-backs game tonight. Thanks for watching and throwing it back to you at the desk.
Thank you, Avery. A thrift store near the Chapman University campus is about more than just sustainability. Chapman News reporter Mariana Quesada has the story.
Store manager Yvonne Lopez is manager of the collection by Casa Teresa. She says the idea of a thrift store supporting the nonprofit shelter for pregnant women in crisis got its start because of the Chapman community.
We would take bins of clothing that we would get in donations. We'd set up a Easy Up pop-up tent and just do a little pop-up sale. In 2016, we had a board of directors who wanted to invest in a property and create a job training program for the women at Casa Teresa, and also create a funneled revenue for the organization. So that's how the collection came about.
Casa Teresa provides pregnant women who are in crisis with shelter and other resources. CEO Lisa Wood says the women who come to Casa Teresa know they will not be judged.
So what it means for a woman coming into our program is that she wants something different for her life and that of her baby. Typically, her childhood has been so traumatized that she doesn't even know how to make healthy decisions. So when she comes in here, we help heal her from the pain of the trauma so that then she can learn healthy decisions and be the mother that she wants to be for her baby, which is usually different than the mother that she had.
In addition to attending classes and workshops on issues such as nutrition, finances, and resume writing, residents also have opportunities to gain retail experience by working at the collection.
Residents who work in our program, they get to receive the skills of like time management, customer service skills, learning how to work well with others, getting back into the workforce, things like that. A little small impact on their journey while they're living at Casa Teresa.
The women at the shelter aren't the only people benefiting from the thrift store. The store's low prices and frequent sales, such as Dollar Day, are popular with nearby college students living on a budget. Casa Teresa also relies on volunteers. nearly 640 of them. They cook meals, babysit, sort donations, and provide support for the women and their children.
Like, it all makes a difference.
The collection store here at 234 North Glassell Street in Orange is open Wednesday through Saturday. I'm Mariana Quesada, reporting for Chapman News.
I'm Alexandra Conyards. Coming up, I'll have the story on how a local high school is helping their community deal with food insecurity.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Bad news for fans of Disneyland and their wallets as the fantasy park raises prices. Single-day tickets have increased by 9%, now priced at $194, while parking fees are up by 17%. The price of the Genie Plus ride jumping service is up by 20%. Disney raises its prices on average about once a year and has seen a 340% increase since 2000 when tickets were only $40. Disney says that the latest price hikes will help with overcrowding, even though the park hasn't recovered pre-pandemic visitor numbers. Disney World in Florida, on the other hand, has not raised its prices this year. I feel like it's hard to find healthy food and affordable food options these days.
I agree. Chapman News reporter Alexandra Conyards is here to tell us how one local high school is helping to solve this issue.
Thanks, Luis and Tegan. Fast food restaurants, mom-and-pop liquor stores, and 7-Elevens. Those are the businesses that surround the four corners of Magnolia High School in Anaheim, located in what is known as a food desert. But tucked away in the back of the school property, you'll find a 2-acre farm. Here is my story on how it has impacted the Anaheim community. The Magnolia Agricultural Community Center, also known as MAC, is an agricultural oasis that is helping Anaheim combat food insecurity. The farm, located in the high school's backyard, has given young adults like Paula Ramirez, a Magnolia High School graduate and current intern of the MAC program, a new appreciation.
I've always lived in the city, so being able to be out here and like see what it looks like, to see how our vegetables and fruits end up looking when they first start to how they finish, it's just an amazing experience, and it really has been life-changing for me.
Program project coordinator Dr. Sabina Jackamis was inspired to start the program when she saw the clear need for food in her community during the pandemic.
We realized that the need in the area was great to help really for the health of the community.
The farm provides fresh produce for 3 different schools in the Anaheim School District. After the first harvest in July 2022, MAC interns had the idea of selling and donating weekly produce boxes. For Ramirez, this initiative has been eye-opening.
When you have a car and you have the money to be able to afford and go all the way to the supermarket to buy fruits and vegetables, you kind of take it for granted, but you don't really pay attention to those people who may not have a car, may not be able to easily access food. It's MAC, like, although it's small, though it's behind a high school, it really has impacted a lot of lives.
While the MAC program helps address food insecurity, it is also creating a transformation in the classroom. So far, 2,300 students from the Anaheim School District have come to the MAC to experience hands-on learning through workshops and labs taught by interns from various universities in the Southern California area.
So it's changing education from just standards-based education to this is what's happening in the real world, and this is how you connect what we're learning in our standards and bringing it so that it's meaningful and much more powerful, so the students can see the meaning and why it matters to them.
The MAC program has hosted various events, such as farm-to-table dinners or even a pumpkin patch this past weekend. Spreading the vision of the program beyond the walls of Magnolia High School, and to the rest of the Anaheim community. Dr. Chapman has told me that the farm is still growing and that this is only the beginning. This is Alexandra Konyarts reporting live in the studio. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Alexandra. Well, that's it for Chapman News this week. Be sure to check us out on our YouTube page at chapmannews.tv and make sure to follow us at Chapman News. I'm Luis Avila.
And I'm Tegan Cali. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next week with more Chapman News.